Welcome to Massive Beers. My name is Matt. We do the beer stuff here. We're doing a brewery we haven't done in a very, very long time. Equilibrium. Man, I have drank my fair share of EQ beers. I think I went to the brewery like within the first couple days they opened and really enjoyed what they did. Brought home growlers. Interviewed them for the podcast. It's been one of those things where, man, I just reviewed and enjoyed a bunch of their beers, but, distance, me moving, pandemic, all that stuff, I just really haven't been out to the brewery all that much. And while their stuff does hit shelves by me, they're extremely high price point for quite some time. Now, that has shifted. This beer used to be closer to $30 a sixer. It's now $22 a six, or a 4-pack, sorry, not a sixer. It's one of those things where the prices have gotten a bit more normal, and I saw it on the shelf, and I was like, let's have at it, because there's been a little bit of consistency issues when it comes to Equilibrium, at least when it comes to their canning. New facility during the pandemic, learning all that stuff, it can be quite daunting. So I'm kind of curious to dive into something, not just from them, but new from them, because I've never had their Morning Haze. Never heard of it before. So it's their Morning Haze. We're talking about a double IPA. It's a beer balanced by science. It's 8% alcohol by volume. It says Product Elevate, whatever that is. And this was canned 3 weeks ago. Keep cold, drink fresh. Equilibrium Brewery. Yeah, that's all they have. Did they even have the location on there? Yeah, Middletown, New York. I've been to the new spot a couple times. I'm curious to see where the sucker lands. Yeah. Last time I was there was probably actually last year on my way back from BeerTuber Palooza, which, lo and behold, is exactly 1 month away from right now while I'm filming. It's the 16th I'm filming this. So I'm kind of excited. To hit the old beers up with the boys again. And gals and they and them and everybody in between. Hey, boys. It's alright. It's the sunset. Who's going to hate on the sunset? Beer-wise, looks the part of double IPA. Maybe a skosh darker than what we'd want. It has a little bit of deep, richer orange to it. Could indicate towards a little bit of negative oxygen. We'll see how that goes. But it looks all the part of a big, robust hazy. Index finger. Off-white head, just south of khaki. Looks all the part of a big old turbid hazy. See if I can get a nose on the sucker. Yeah. There's just this kind of slightly... It's like a slightly... I think there's a touch of oxidation here. That's what I'm trying to say. It has a richness to the nose, the rich fruitiness to the nose, but it comes off a little bit kind of tempered. There's it's running a gamut of fruitiness. You're getting your tropical, you're getting your stone, you're getting your citrus, but it's almost like an over-ripened, so there's an over-ripened sweetness I talk about a lot of times when it comes to drinking beer and super rich hazies, but this one has this kind of syrupiness kind of vibe to it. It's very, very hard to kind of quantify. You figured I'd figure it out after doing this for 10 years. But it has this kind of richness to it. This almost caramelized sweetness to it that is not something you typically get from a hazy IPA. And that's typically how a touch of oxidation works for me when it comes to these bigger hazies. And that's kind of it's that melange of fruitiness, leaning stone fruitiness, but that's kind of typical. It's the last bits to hold on when something has a touch of oxidation, at least for me. It's more like a stone fruitiness as opposed to a bright kiwi or a bright orange citrusy thing kind of going on, or tropical fruit kind of thing going on. Doesn't smell negative by any stretch of imagination. I'm not saying it's bad, but there's just that syrupy caramelized sweetness, something you attribute more with a barley wine kind of sweetness. Again, not saying this smells like a barley wine, but that kind of sweetness as opposed to just big, robust, fluffy, creamy, hazy kind of sweetness. So, it doesn't smell negative, just doesn't have that chutzpah that you want from a big old double IPA. Let's dive in. Cheers, y'all. Okay. It's pretty vibrant. I'm pretty aggressive on the taste. But I'm still going to stick by my guns here and say there's definitely a decent amount of negative oxygen floating around in this. I just think it's so big and so burly it can hold up to that. Plus, we're only talking about 3 weeks here. So if it's getting to the point where it's actually starting to turn a little bit, certain negative oxygen starting to eat at that beer, if it's big enough, it's still really going to hold up to it. The mouthfeel, surprisingly, is nice. It's not ultra creamy, fluffy, dense, but it still has a nice, silky, fluffy creaminess to it, just not ultra. The sweetness here does come off a little bit slightly candy-like, slightly hard candy-like, which is something a bit foreign when it comes to these double IPAs, more specifically with Equilibrium. Again, more often than not, when you do have oxidation in these hazies, a sweetness tends to come off quite a bit more kind of hard candy sweet as opposed to that soft confectionery, heavily oated, maybe slightly lactosey thing. It kind of flips the script and goes the other direction. So that's kind of the case here. It, again, is a melange, a mixture, what's it, medley? That's the word. Fruitiness here. It's just like you can't really, even at this point, kind of pick out, like, I'm definitely getting this and definitely getting that. Sure, you could say it, but I think it's a bunch of porky pies. It's just this fruit medley of hoppiness. There's this dryness to it, which I typically don't think you're going to get on something like this, because it's sweet, you know, it has that kind of candy-like sweetness, yet it does have this dryness in your tongue. I think that's, again, your oxidation reaching out there. And there is a decent amount of bittering in this, which I think wouldn't be there if all the other bits and pieces that might have gone by the wayside of something that has a slight oxidation to it. Yeah, because it's like a green hop pellet. There's definitely a carbonic thing going on, too. It's a green hop pellet thing that I think shows quite a bit different than if the beer is really kind of zero negative oxygen or fresher or whatever you want to call it. It's not a negative beer by any stretch of the imagination. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it feels like it's seen much better days. And those better days were probably when it was in the tank, not actually in, well, my computer dings very loudly. It's like the second time it's happened to review over the past couple days. I keep forgetting it. So I have 2 monitors. I actually have 2 computers. I have my main Windows gaming rig, and I have a Mac Pro over here. And my Mac Pro usually, you know, watch TV shows, movies, stuff like that while I do stuff over here. And I leave the volume on. Sorry about that. Anyway, but it just has this kind of herky-jerky, disjointed, kind of sweet, bittering, dry, sweet kind of combination that's kind of all over the place. That keeps it from being like just wowzer stuff, which is what I'm used to with the Equilibrium. I mean, you know, I kind of alluded to this a little bit in the actual beginning. Not that I want to kind of go into beers with preconceived notions, but, you know, I've heard grumblings from a lot of people about consistency issues when it comes to Equilibrium, and I bought this because I was curious about the beer, because it's not something, you know, it's not MC squared, it's not Fulton, it's something outside of what I typically or ever had from them. But I was also like, I want to get one, and I want it to be delicious, and I want it to be kind of the, maybe not the exception to the rule, but this is great stuff. And it kind of, you know, fell in a little bit the other direction. I believe this beer has a little bit of negative, more than a little bit of negative oxygen going on, to the point where it's just kind of losing its fastball. It's probably going to turn into something quite a bit less fantastical over the next month or so. Not that these beers have an ultra long shelf life to begin with, but you're talking about something that's less than a month old. You figured it would, if it wasn't kept cold the whole time, you figured it would have held up a little bit better than this, but you can see it's kind of on a downswing. That's kind of a bummer, because I'm in a mood for a big, rich, hazy IPA. Been in a little bit of kick of those lately. Other has been doing me quite well. You know, a couple other breweries. This one's just a little bit of a miss for me, and that's kind of a bummer. I'll have to revisit. I'll have to go back to the brewery and try it on draft and see how that goes. So yeah, let's talk about it. It's one of the better double IPAs I've had as late. No value and availability, $22. That's the part that kind of sucks. $22, and you're like, man, this is really good. You can kind of compartmentalize that and be okay with it. But I got 3 more of these now, and leave you with, if you like what we like this, if you don't mind slightly oxidized double IPAs with a bit of bittering and a bit of sweetness, you'll be alright. Equilibrium. Have you been to the brewery? Have you had their beers? Have you had this particular beer from this particular batch? That's probably the most important question when these beers are probably not at their optimal level. Is this what if you've had this beer, is this your experience? Has it been this color? Has it had the same notes? Everybody's different. Their palate's going to be different, but has it been similar for you? Has it been absolutely different for you? Have you had it fresh? Have you had it recently? All that fun stuff. Let's talk about it down there. So there we go. Reviewing the books. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Hopefully you're enjoying a little bit of double IPA right now. Hopefully see you next time. Cheers, all.